few years ago, I decided to go camping. I was 35, and I usually enjoyed getting away from screens and spending time in nature. This time, I picked a quiet spot in a secluded national park. It was surrounded by towering pines and had a clear lake nearby. I thought it would be a peaceful weekend to recharge. I set up my tent and gathered some wood for a fire. As the sun began to set, everything felt normal. I cooked some food and watched the flames dance. But as twilight crept in, I heard something. It was faint, almost like laughter carried by the wind. At first, I thought it might be other campers, but it felt different. It felt too close, almost invasive. My skin crawled, but I shook it off. That night, I sat by the fire, listening to the crackles. The laughter came again, more clearly this time. It definitely was not other campers. My heart raced. I jumped to my feet and called out, expecting to find someone. Nothing. Just me, the trees, and that laughter echoing. I was sure I had imagined it, but it lingered in my thoughts. On the second day, I explored the area. I tried to forget the laughter, but it kept creeping back into my mind. While walking around my campsite, I noticed footprints in the dirt. They were smaller than mine and looked fresh. A chill ran down my spine. I hesitated, wondering if I should have come out here alone. That evening, as I prepped for dinner, I found something near the fire pit. It was a child's toy, a small, worn-out action figure. I had not brought it, and I didn't know how it got there. My stomach twisted at the sight of it. Who leaves a toy in the woods? I tried to tell myself it must have belonged to some kids who passed by, but the unease only grew, clawing at my insides. I sat by the fire, glancing at the trees. The laughter returned, clearer than ever, almost rhythmic. An unsettling feeling washed over me. It felt like someone was hiding or watching me. I shook my head, trying to dismiss my fears, but the anxiety overwhelmed me. The next morning I packed up, feeling deeply uneasy. I left the toy behind. I didn't want it, I just wanted to forget. Back home, I replayed every moment in my mind. The laughter haunted me. How could I explain the toy? I wasn't sure if it was real or just my imagination. That trip lingered with me. Did something follow me back? I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes lurking in the shadows. Now, sitting in my office, I hear laughter echoing in my mind. It chills me to the bone. What really happened out there? I don't think I'll ever feel safe camping again. Sometimes when the wind blows just right, I swear I can still hear that laughter behind me. Days turned into weeks, but the memories of that camping trip never faded. I went about my life, acting as if everything was normal, but inside I felt off. My coworkers noticed I was quieter. I did my best to shake off the feeling, but the laughter haunted my thoughts. One Saturday morning, I decided to take a walk at a nearby park. I needed fresh air and insight. The trees were alive with sounds, birds chirping and leaves rustling, yet the laughter whispered in the back of my mind. I pushed through, trying to enjoy my walk. While I was strolling along the path, I spotted something glinting in the grass. I walked over, curiosity getting the better of me. As I bent down, I realized it was another toy, a small rubber dinosaur. Confusion washed over me. It looked old and worn, like the action figure I'd found at the campsite. I picked it up, my hands trembling. For a moment, I just stood there, heart racing. This wasn't just coincidental. I took it home, hoping to search for answers. Maybe it belonged to a child in the area. I hopped on my laptop and began looking into lost toys reported in the park. There were some, but nothing that matched what I had found. Frustrated, I decided to call the park office, hoping for clarity. "Hi, I'm calling because I found a toy in the park," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I wanted to know if anyone has reported it missing." The ranger on the line was friendly, but I could hear disbelief in her voice. "You said a toy? We get a lot of kids out here, lots of toys get lost. Are you looking for something specific?" "No, this was older. Just a dinosaur." "Can you describe it?" As I explained the details, her tone shifted. "That sounds familiar," she said slowly. "I believe it was reported missing last summer by a family. By chance, did you camp at Whispering Pines?" My stomach dropped. "Yes, I did." There's been some talk about that area. A few reports of kids lingering too long, not responding when called. Her voice lowered, barely a whisper. Some parents got worried. Worried? Why? Just things happening that shouldn't. Kids wandering off and hearing things. Whispers. My heart pounded in my chest. I remembered the laughter. Had I come across something? A child lost in the woods? Is anyone still missing? I barely got the words out, my throat dry. Not officially, but it's best to stay away from whispering pines. I hung up, my hands now shaking. The connection to my camping trip felt undeniable. Was that laughter real? That night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again, clearer this time. Laughter floated through my mind, and it took on a darker tone. My breath hitched and I sat up, feeling waves of dread crash over me. I knew then. Something was definitely wrong. Just then, the sound of soft knocking echoed from the window. My heart raced as I turned toward it. Should I look? The shadows danced and I felt a very familiar weight in the air. I could almost hear that laughter again, mocking me from outside. With trembling hands, I reached for the curtain, ready to pull it back. The moment my fingers touched the fabric, everything went dead silent. But I knew something was out there, just waiting. I took a deep breath and pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. The moonlight cast a pale glow across my backyard, but there was nothing there, just shadows. I hesitated, grappling with disappointment and relief. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me again. But then, a sudden rustling came from behind the bushes. My heart leaped into my throat. I squinted, trying to make sense of the movement. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it an animal, or something worse? I stepped back from the window, my gut churning. Questions fogged my thoughts, but I couldn't shake the urge to know what was out there. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight feature, and slowly approached the sliding door. My fingers trembled as I fumbled with the lock. Once outside, the cold air hit my face. I shivered and turned the light towards the bushes. "Hello?" I called out, hoping for some kind of answer. All I heard was the rustling, louder now, as if something, or someone, was moving deeper into the darkness. I stepped toward the noise, pulling the light in front of me like a shield. The laughter I'd heard at the campsite echoed in my memory, unsettling my already frayed nerves. What if it was true? What if whatever followed me home was now lurking in my yard? The beam caught something glinting in the grass. My stomach tightened as I knelt cautiously. Another toy, a small, broken-action figure. My mind raced with panic. This one looked even older than the dinosaur, a faded red color now covered in dirt. Then I saw it wrapped around its neck, a frayed piece of string. As I touched it, I felt a rush of disgust and fear wash over me. There was something familiar about it, something I couldn't quite place. Instantly, the memories from the camping trip came flooding back. Kids playing, laughter, the shadows moving between the trees. Before I could stand, I heard it again. The laughter, sweet but twisted, echoing from the woods. It filled me with dread. I shot to my feet, heart racing. Why was it getting louder? I turned, ready to head back inside, when I froze. Standing at the edge of my yard was a figure. It was a child. A little boy I had never seen before. He had messy hair, and he looked dirty, as if he had just emerged from the forest. My breath caught in my throat. "Can you help me?" he whispered, his voice soft but urgent. Something was distinctly off about him. The shadows cast by the moon made his eyes appear larger, almost unblinking. I wanted to run inside, to lock the door and pretend I hadn't seen him, but something about his desperate plea rooted me to the spot. "Where's your mom?" I asked, wavering. His gaze shifted to the trees behind him, and the laughter echoed again, louder this time, mocking and sinister. She's playing with the others," he said, pointing into the darkness. That was when I realized. I didn't hear just laughter anymore. I could hear whispers too, soft, beckoning. Something deep inside warned me to turn around and get away from him. With a surge of instinct, I took a step back. I think you should go back inside," I stammered, my voice trembling. His eyes glistened with an unnatural light. But I can't find them. Then everything went dark. The laughter faded, swallowed by the shadows. My heart raced as panic swallowed my thoughts. I turned to run, and as I did, I heard his voice for the last time. "Stay with us." The chill of his words seeped into my bones. I sprinted back inside, locking the door behind me. What had I brought home? What did I just encounter? As I pressed my back against the cold wood, the questions piled up, adding weight to the terror that wrapped around me. Then the house went silent. Too silent. I stood by the door, barely breathing. The silence enveloped me, broken only by the faint sound of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. I cursed myself for stepping outside, for even thinking I could find any clarity in what was happening. I turned off my phone's flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. I didn't want to see anything more. But then, just as I relaxed against the door, I thought I heard a knocking sound, soft but distinct. It started low, rhythmic, like tiny fingers tapping against the wood. Panic surged again. "Stop it," I whispered to myself. "Just stop it." I stepped away from the door, inching toward the living room, heart racing again. I needed to distract myself, to remember that I was safe inside. I flipped on the lamp. A soft glow filled the room. It felt warm, but the shadow still clawed at the corners of my mind. That's when I noticed it. A drawing on the coffee table. My stomach twisted. It was a crayon sketch, crude but recognizable. A little boy with wide eyes and messy hair stood under a tree. Surrounding him were dark figures, hardly distinguishable, but they vaguely resembled shadows. I didn't recognize the handwriting that labeled the picture. "Please find us." I felt nauseous. Where had this come from? I didn't recall drawing anything like it. Maybe it was a prank, a cruel joke. But the unease gnawed at me. I grabbed it and turned it over, hoping for an explanation. Nothing. The back was blank. I looked around the room, feeling the walls closing in. What the hell was happening? It was too much to process. Then my phone buzzed, startling me. I snatched it from the table. The screen lit up with an unknown number. My finger hesitated over the answer button. Just as I steadied my breath, the knocking came again, more urgent, more insistent. "Answer it," a voice in my head shouted. I swiped the screen, putting the phone to my ear. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then a breathy whisper slid through the line. "Can you help me?" That same chill from outside swept through me again. "Who is this?" But there was only laughter now, echoing and weaving through my phone speaker, twisting my stomach. I slammed my phone down, backing away from the table. I needed to think straight. Maybe I could call someone, a friend or the police. I reached for my phone again, but just as I did, the lights flickered. "Stay with us." The words echoed in my mind, jarring me. They weren't just whispers from the outside. They whispered right here, in my house, in my head. I could almost feel the presence of something, beckoning and sinister, coiling around me. For the first time I felt trapped, held in this nightmare without an escape. I bolted to the front door, ready to break free. But the knocking intensified, now sounding like pounding fists. Was it coming from outside? There was only one way to find out, but fear clawed at my insides, freezing me in place. Then something shifted behind me, a shadow flickering across the wall. I turned quickly, and just as I did, the room plunged into darkness. Someone was in the house. I felt a rush of cold air, the kind that shivers up your spine. My instincts screamed at me to just run, but I stood frozen, gripped by a mixture of fear and curiosity. Dim shapes moved near the edge of my sight, teasing me to catch a glimpse. But every time I focused, they vanished. Breathing deeply, I reached for my phone again, desperate for light. But it remained dead in my hands, mocking me. I had to find something, anything that could help. Stumbling through the darkness, I felt my way toward the hallway that led to the kitchen. Each step echoed in my head, amplifying the tension. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, like the rustle of dry leaves, weaving its way around me. "Help us." The words were barely audible, but they felt like a heavy weight pressing down. No, I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't that far gone. Sweat dripped down my temples as I reached the kitchen. I fumbled in the drawers, praying that I'd find a flashlight, but all I found was a collection of old utensils and crumbs. My heart began to race again, and I knew I was running out of time. The knocking returned, louder now, a ferocious, rhythmic battering that vibrated the very foundation of my house. I turned toward the front door, torn between the urge to flee and the need to uncover whatever was lurking in the shadows. That same breathy whisper echoed in my mind. "Stay with us." I shook my head, trying to clear it. What did it mean? Why did these cryptic messages fill my space? I backed into the living room, still searching for anything I could use. Then I spotted the drawing again on the coffee table, the childlike scrawl seeming to pulse with an energy of its own. "Please find us." It both intrigued and terrified me. Suddenly the lamp flickered once more. I glanced up at the shadows on the wall. They seemed to stretch and twist as though they were alive, inching closer. A movement caught my attention just to the left of my vision. I turned sharply, and the flickering light snuffed out completely, plunging me into heavy darkness. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice trembling. "Show yourself!" Behind me, laughter, sharp and menacing, broke the silence, sending a chill straight to my bones. I turned again, heart racing violently in my chest, prepared to confront whatever was haunting me. "I know you're there," I yelled, my words returning empty in the dark. Then, like a flash illuminating both my surroundings and my fear, a thin sliver of moonlight crept through the front window. The silhouettes that danced across the room sharpened into form. They were not just shadows. No, these were figures. Vague, yet unmistakably human. My breath hitched, and in that moment I knew I was not alone. Before I could even process this revelation, the knocking returned, now heard clearly behind me. A steady pounding from the front door that sent my pulse into a frenzy. I had to make a choice. Either I stood my ground and faced the figures creeping closer, or I ran to the door and opened it, surrendering myself to whatever awaited me outside. Instinctively, I took a step back. The darkness shifted, consuming more light. I could feel cold air slithering around my ankles as if it had legs of its own. The figures were still obscured, clouded. Just as a hurried decision urged me to act, the shadows whispered once again, clearer and more sinister. "Join us." A sharp tremor ran through me. There was a palpable urge to obey as the world felt like it was tilting on its axis. My resolve began to crumble. In the flickering moonlight, I made my choice. But right then, a cold hand touched my shoulder. My world narrowed to a single point as I spun around, breathless and terrified. I whipped around, ready to face whatever ethereal being had touched me. My breath came in quick, sharp gasps. A figure stood there, partially engulfed in shadow but undeniably human. The dim light revealed a child's face, pale, wide-eyed, and filled with an otherworldly glow. "Help!" the child whispered, her voice nearly drowned out by the persistent pounding at the door. "Please, help us." My heart dropped. I stared at her, frozen. She looked so fragile, yet a sense of dread crept forward like fog. I reached out instinctively, but the moment I did, she vanished as if I had swiped at air. I blinked, hoping she'd return. Instead, the shadows in the corner deepened, and those whispers grew again, frantic. "Stay with us, join us." It felt like a chant now, an invitation laced with foreboding. I fought against that magnetic pull, but my body was heavy, weighed down by fear and something darker lurking beneath. Then I heard it, a faint sobbing from the same direction where the child had stood. My instincts screamed for me to run, that whatever was happening was wrong. I couldn't let myself be pulled in. I turned back to the front door as the knocking turned into slamming, each blow echoing like an unforgiving drumbeat. "Go away!" I shouted, somehow hoping someone outside could hear me. The sobbing continued, rising in pitch, drowning out the sound of the knocking. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, forcing myself to think rationally. What if I opened the door? Would that be an escape or my demise? But the sounds of distress were chilling. It was no longer just sorrow. Now there was panic, terror. I stumbled toward the window, arms outstretched, hoping for a clearer view of what lay outside. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw another shadow dart past the hallway entrance. My gaze snapped toward it, but in the blink of an eye, it was gone. My heart raced again, pounding against my ribcage as dread seeped into my bones. "What is happening?" I muttered, searching the darkness, desperate for answers that refused to come. In the stillness that followed, I strained to listen, half expecting the child to reappear or for a voice to echo back. But the only sound was my own breath, erratic and fractured. That's when I saw it, a faded photograph pinned to the wall just beyond the doorway. I hadn't noticed it before. Striding cautiously closer, I squinted to make out the details. It was a family photo, dusty but clear enough. A couple smiling beside two children, the same children I'd seen in the shadows. Before I could process it fully, the light flickered back on, illuminating the room momentarily. The figures were standing closer now, almost touching the edges of the light. They weren't smiling anymore. Panic surged through me as the whispers crescendoed. I was out of time. I tore my gaze from the photo to the front door, feeling like it was my only option. Then, just as I reached for the handle, the laughter returned, filling the space with malicious glee. I hesitated at the door, dread pooling in my stomach. Whatever lay beyond the threshold was better than this. But was it really? With trembling hands, I turned the handle and opened the door wide. The door creaked as it swung open, revealing a dimly lit corridor stretching out before me. A chill swept through the air, sending shivers up my spine. The whispers faded, leaving behind an echo of silence. I hesitated on the threshold, heart pounding loudly in my ears. But I couldn't turn back now. As I stepped into the corridor, the shadows seemed to pulse around me, shifting unnaturally. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder at the room I had just left. Was there a choice to go back? Or was that a trap in itself? I forced myself to focus on the path ahead. My footsteps echoed off the walls, creating an unsettling rhythm that matched my anxiety. The hallway led to a series of doors, each one slightly ajar. Dim light flickered from one room, beckoning me closer. I approached the first door. Just as I reached for the handle, a loud crash reverberated from the last door at the end of the hall. My breath caught in my throat. The sound was like a body hitting the floor, heavy, final, and all-consuming. I felt a ripple of fear wash over me, pushing me to either investigate or flee. I took a step back, but the whispers returned, now urging me to move forward. "Help us!" they chanted again, mixing terror with desperation. It was the same tone as the child's voice. Somehow those whispers felt familiar, as if they were woven into the fabric of this place. Unable to tear myself away from the last door, I edged closer. I had to know. As I approached, the door swung open softly, revealing a dark room filled with nothing but shadows. I peered inside. The air was thick, and it felt like I was stepping into a void. Then I saw it. A small figure huddled in the corner, barely illuminated by the ghostly beams of light filtering through the cracks. My breath hitched. It was the same child I had seen moments ago, her features twisted in fear and anguish. "Please," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Don't leave us." "What happened?" I whispered, instinctively taking a step closer. I felt drawn to her, my heart aching to understand. Before she could answer, there was another sharp crash from the hallway. I turned, feeling panic swell in my chest. The other doors flung open as if something was escaping. A gust of wind swept past me, as if the very darkness was coming to claim me. I glanced back and the child's gaze pierced through mine. "Please," she implored again. "Find us." Suddenly I was overcome by a surge of urgency. I had to figure out what was happening, but before I could process it all, the lights flickered violently. Everything plunged into darkness. In the chaos, I felt hands on my shoulders as if the shadows themselves were reaching for me. My instincts kicked in. I dashed past the open door, through the hallway, and toward the exit, but the hands tightened. Panic flared as I realized the whispers turned to screams. They were desperate now, and I was the target. As I burst outside, the world beyond felt like a separate realm. The moment I stepped through the threshold, the silence returned. But I still heard the echo of her words in my mind. Find us. I stood there, panting in the night air, my heart racing. I was free from the shadows, but I couldn't ignore the chill creeping down my spine. I had merely escaped the darkness, but had yet to unravel its grip. But then I noticed something on the ground. Amid the dirt and debris lay a small, familiar object. A faded photograph, the same as the one on the wall inside. I felt the ground shift beneath me as reality pivoted. I had to go back. I turned back to the door, hesitating only a moment before stepping inside again. The air felt heavier this time, heavy with the weight of secrets. I moved quickly down the corridor, my heart racing. I had to find that child. I had to uncover whatever truths were buried in this darkness. As I re-entered the first room, the flickering light cast strange shadows across the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I recalled the child's eyes. They were wide with fear, and her plea rang in my ears. Find us. I scanned the room, but it was empty save for the remnants of dust and cobwebs. The walls seemed to close in on me, tightening as I searched for any clue. I needed to understand what the child meant. That's when I noticed something glinting under the old floorboards. Kneeling down, I pried loose a few boards, my fingers trembling. I pulled out a small wooden box, intricately carved but worn. It felt cold in my hands as I opened it. Inside was a delicate silver locket. I opened it carefully, revealing a tiny portrait of a woman, her features soft yet hauntingly familiar. A jolt of recognition shot through me. Why did she look so much like the child? I felt its significance deep within me, but before I could fully grasp it, the air shifted abruptly. The temperature dropped and a low rumble echoed through the building. I was not alone. The shadows stirred, silent yet alert. I could almost hear a heartbeat pulsing beneath the floor. The whispers grew frantic, now layered with urgency. Help us, help her! Panic surged again. I couldn't decipher the voices, yet they seemed to direct the energy in the room. I clutched the locket tightly, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward the darkness yet again. Was this a connection? Was this woman somehow tied to the child, to whatever tragedy had left them here? Suddenly a door at the far end of the hallway swung open with a force that rattled the walls. The shadows shifted again, swirling around me like a tempest. It was as if something was luring me toward the chaos, the very heart of this haunting experience. I steeled myself against the encroaching fear. I couldn't let the darkness consume me. I took a deep breath and made my way toward the open door, the locket still clutched in my hand. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, but the only answer was a chilling wind that swept through the hall. As I crossed the threshold into the next room, I froze. The shadows thickened once more, forming indistinct shapes that seemed to reach for me. Then I saw it, a faint outline of a girl standing at the far end. It was the child, glowing softly in the dark. "Help," she whispered again, but this time it felt stronger, clearer. I took a step forward, the locket feeling warmer in my palm. But then the air crackled. A heavy weight pressed down on my chest as if to warn me against moving closer. Was I too late? Had I come seeking answers only to unleash something I couldn't handle? Before I could think, the shadows surged toward me, and I felt a pull. I was about to discover what had happened here, but first I had to survive whatever dark force was waiting in the depths of this place. I was still trying to process the sight of the child standing before me when the shadows suddenly swept closer, engulfing the room in darkness. Panic clawed at my throat. I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions now. "I'm here to help you," I said, hoping my voice didn't tremble. "Just tell me what you need." The child held her hands out, urging me forward. Her figure flickered like a candle's flame, as if she might vanish any moment. I took another step, the warmth of the locket radiating through my palm. creating a small oasis of light amidst the encroaching shadows. Then a loud bang echoed through the room, causing me to jump back. I turned toward the source of the noise. A series of objects fell from a nearby table, each hitting the floor with a loud thud. I couldn't see through the thick darkness, but I could feel the malevolence lurking just beyond my vision. "Don't be afraid," I told myself, but it felt hollow. I could hear the shadows whispering, a cacophony of voices swirling around me, rising and falling like a tide. It was disorienting. I squeezed the locket tighter, searching for a reason to feel brave. "Help! Help her!" the child urged, her voice echoing around me, almost melding with the voices of the shadows. I felt a rush of urgency wash over me. I had to act, but where to start? I glanced back at the girl, her expression unchanging, yet her eyes seemed to grow heavier, filled with an agony I couldn't comprehend. Following her gaze, I noticed something shining on the floor near her. My heart skipped as I realized it was a small, broken mirror piece, reflecting a fragment of light from the locket. Instinct kicked in. I knelt and reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cold glass. As I grasped the shard, I felt a jolt shoot through me. Images flooded my mind, scenes of laughter, a house filled with warmth, and then the darkness creeping in, wrapping its tendrils around the joy. It flickered before me, indecipherable, aching with sorrow. I gasped and pulled away, trying to sort through the memories. Was this the woman from the locket? Was she the child's mother? Before I could ponder further, a whirling gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind me with a deafening crash. The shadows surged forward, and I felt their presence pushing against me, like a tide ready to drag me under. "No!" I shouted, clutching the mirror and locket tightly. The warmth seemed to pulse. The shadows hesitated, drawn back as if repelled by the reflections of light. In that moment of clarity, I realized these objects were tethered to the child's fate. I had to piece together their story to set them free. But before I could determine my next move, an icy breath slid down my neck, whispering threats that made my skin crawl. Someone was in the house, watching me, waiting. I turned slowly, heart pounding, knowing the true level of danger I faced was far worse than the darkness. What did it want with me? And more importantly, could I unravel the mystery before it was too late? I stood in the heart of the room, clutching the locket and the shard of mirror, both objects cooling in my hands as dread seeped into my bones. The shadows danced closer, shimmering like a dark tide threatening to overtake me. The air pulsed with an energy that crackled, tightening around my throat as I struggled to breathe. The child's eyes locked onto mine, pleading, and it felt as if her very soul were tied to my resolve. "Help us," she whispered again, the words laced with urgency. I took a shaky step forward, a surge of determination pushing me closer. "What happened to you?" I asked, feeling like I was speaking into a void. But the room remained silent except for the whispering shadows, which seemed to momentarily retreat. I glanced around, desperate to find something, anything that could unlock the memories imprisoned in this darkness. The shadows receded just enough for me to glimpse the distant outline of a worn trunk in the corner, partially hidden beneath a shroud of dust. Hope ignited within me as I staggered toward it. "Stay with me!" The child's voice erupted, thick with urgency. I reached the trunk and fumbled with the rusty latch. It creaked open, and inside was an assortment of old toys and faded photographs, some scattered and torn. My heart raced as I sifted through them, searching for clues, for moments that could connect these children to their fate. One photo caught my eye, a family snapshot just like the one I had seen earlier, but different. The faces of the children were slightly obscured, but there was one clear, sunny day where laughter radiated through the image. They looked so happy, so normal. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the little girl. She was the same one standing before me. Desperately, I looked back at the child. "Is this you?" She nodded. A flicker of fear illuminated in her eyes as the shadows began to thicken again. "They took us when the laughter stopped." Her voice trembled, filled with a sorrow that transcended her small frame. The edges of my comprehension began to blur. What had happened in this house? Why had they been taken? My instinct screamed that whatever dark energy swirled around us was linked to this tragic history, and I was caught in its web. A frigid breath brushed past me, sending a shiver down my spine. The shadows pounded on the walls, demanding my attention, trying to drown out the child's voice. I had to concentrate, had to piece together the puzzle. I pulled out more photographs, more toys, a stuffed bear, a wooden horse. They were all mementos of lives lived, friends and laughter echoing, but still buried under layers of darkness. "Help us!" the child cried again, her voice rising with sudden intensity as the shadows roared loudly, preying on my fear. I gripped the mirror tighter, the warmth beginning to flicker like a dying ember amidst the encroaching darkness. "What do I do?" I shouted, my voice cracking. "I want to help you, but I don't know how." For a moment all was lost in the tumult of the shadows and the child's sorrowful gaze. Then something shifted. The whispers from the darkness sharpened into clarity, forming coherent words that danced over me like a gust of wind. "Free us, break the bonds." In that moment clarity struck me like lightning. "The locket, the mirror," I shouted, realization dawning. These items held such significance. They were the key. I took the locket and pressed it into the darkness, calling out to whatever force wrangled with this place. "Let them go!" There came a guttural response, an uproar that shook the foundations. Light burst forth from the locket, illuminating the room, scattering the shadows as the whispers wailed in despair. "Join us!" they screamed, yet their insistence began to falter as the light overwhelmed them. The child stepped closer, her figure shimmering, flickering like a fragile candle fighting against the wind. "Don't let it take you," I warned her. "We can break this." In a moment of fierce clarity, I shattered the mirror against the wooden floor. A brilliant flash erupted as fragments whirled in the air, catching the flickering light. From within the shards spewed images of laughter and warmth, of play and joy. The echoes of children rang into the air, drowning out the cries of the shadows around us. The room itself began to convulse, light battling against the encroaching dark. The child's presence grew stronger in the flood of brightness. "Help! Find us!" she urged, prompting something within me. A memory, a connection to free her and her kin from this torment. With a howl, the shadows recoiled, wrapping themselves around the trunk and the remnants of memories intertwined within it. For a fleeting moment they fought back, but the light was too bright, too palpable. It enveloped everything. "Let them go! Please!" My voice strained, rising above the chaos, driven by an unyielding need to rescue these spirits trapped in their own past. As if drawn from the depths of despair, a rush of wind blasted from my outspread hands, spiraling through the room while the energy pulsed through the air like a heartbeat. The shadows screamed and writhed, caught in the cyclone of light. The child's face grew radiant, no longer the sickly hue of despair, but full of hope and grace. "Don't forget me," she breathed, her voice a mere echo mingling with the laughter that rang out, glistening as the darkness melted away. When the final vestiges of the shadowy forms dissolved beneath the brilliance, I fell to the ground, exhausted and dazed. I gasped for breath, the oppressive weight lifting as one last flicker of darkness faded into nothingness. As I looked around, the room was bathed in golden light, the chaos replaced with an eerie stillness. But the child was gone. I sat alone amidst broken toys and memories, the connection lingering like an echo in the air. I would never know the full truth behind what happened here, the shadows, the laughter, or even the depths of the tragedy they bore. But I had salvaged something, freed those lost spirits and untangled a web of darkness that threatened to claim me in the process. As I stepped outside into the chill of night, I felt the remnants of their laughter still fade into the wind. A part of me would always carry the echoes of that day, wondering about their stories, about the unknown, pondering the balance of light and dark, forever intertwined.